She looked me straight in the eyes and said coldly, "I don't cook for you. I only cook for my kids. You're a grown man. Figure it out." I said nothing. But weeks later, when the divorce papers were served, her cry of "You're ending this over dinner" was louder than any meal she had ever made. It was a Tuesday, I think. The days blur together when you're grinding away. I remember getting home around 7 o'clock after a long day at work, the kind of day that leaves a buzzing in your bones. All I wanted was a quiet evening. The house was mine, bought and paid for years before I met Sarah. When she and her two kids, Jake and Emily, moved in after our marriage 5 years ago, it became our house. Or so I thought. The smell of roasted chicken drifted through the air, and for a moment, my shoulders relaxed. A simple family dinner. I walked into the kitchen. Sarah stood at the counter, scrolling on her phone. The kids were at the table, plates piled high with chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans, laughing at a video on a phone. It looked like a normal family scene. I dropped my keys in the bowl by the door. "Hey, everyone. Smells great, honey." Sarah didn't even look up. "Hey." The kids mumbled their greetings. I went to grab a plate. As I reached for the platter of chicken, Sarah's voice cut through the air. It wasn't angry, just flat. "Cold. There's not enough for you." I froze. I looked at the platter. Half a chicken still sat there, plenty of potatoes, plenty of beans. Surely I misheard. "Sorry, what was that?" This time she looked up, her expression unreadable. "I didn't make enough for you. I made dinner for me and the kids." I blinked, confused. This had never happened before. "Okay, well, there looks like plenty left. I'll just take a small piece." Then came the words that changed everything. She looked directly at me and said, "I don't cook for you, Mark. I only cook for my kids. You're a grown man. Figure it out." And then she went back to scrolling on her phone. Silence. The kids stopped laughing. They stared at their plates, pretending they hadn't heard. The air in the room, once warm with the smell of chicken, turned to ice. "Figure it out." I stood there for 10 seconds, plate heavy in my hand. Strangely, I felt no anger, no explosion of emotion. It was quiet in my head, like her words had unlocked something inside me, a final, definitive click. I looked around. My wife buried in her phone. Her kids eating at my table, in my house, eating food bought with my money. And me, the grown man, told to figure out his own dinner, the provider of everything reduced to an outsider. A wallet with legs. Without a word, I put the plate back in the cabinet. I opened the fridge, took out leftover pizza, slid a slice into the microwave, and ate it standing at the counter, scrolling through my phone. The silence was deafening. When I was done, I rinsed my plate, put it in the dishwasher, and went to my office. I closed the door. That was the moment our marriage ended. She just didn't know it yet. For the next 3 weeks, I figured it out. I didn't argue. I didn't demand an apology. She had made my position clear. I adapted. I started doing my own grocery shopping, just enough for me. I bought a small grill and cooked dinners outside: steak, burgers, chicken. I ate alone, reading a book. I stopped contributing to the family grocery fund. I paid the house bills. Sure, the lights stayed on, but the river of cash that flowed into her account, which meant new clothes, lunches out, and whatever she pleased, dried up. I simply stopped the transfers. Of course, she noticed. A week later, she confronted me. The grocery card was declined. "You didn't put any money in my account this week." I looked up calmly. "I'm figuring it out, like you said. I'm handling my own food now, so I adjusted the budget." "Mark, that's not funny. The kids need things." "The kids are always welcome to the food I buy for myself. And if you need money for groceries, you can use the joint account debit card." That account hadn't been touched in years and had only a few hundred in it. Technically our money, but nothing like the thousands she was used to. She stared at me, baffled. She thought I was punishing her over the dinner incident, but she couldn't see it. I was just living by the new rules she had written. She had drawn the line, separating herself and her kids from me. I was simply making that line official, While she fumed, I was making other moves. Quietly, I met with one of the best divorce lawyers in the city. I showed him the prenup we had signed ironclad, ensuring the house and my investments remained mine. I showed him years of bank statements proving I had been the sole provider. And then I told him about the dinner. He nodded with a grim little smile. That's the clearest example of marital breakdown I've ever heard. The papers were drawn that Friday afternoon. A process server handed them to her while I was grilling a steak on the patio. I watched from the grill as she opened the envelope. Confusion turned to disbelief, then white-hot rage. She stormed out, waving the papers. What is this, Mark? What the hell is this? I flipped my steak calmly. It's a petition for divorce. Sarah, her voice cracked into a shriek. A divorce? Over dinner? You're ending our marriage over one stupid meal? I looked at her evenly. No, Sarah. I'm ending this because I realized I'm not your husband. I'm your landlord, your banker, just the guy who pays for everything while you raise your family. You said it yourself, you cook for your kids, not for me. Well, now you can figure out how to provide for your kids too. The look on her face shifted from entitled fury to genuine panic. For the first time, I think she understood. It was never about the chicken. It was about everything. And she had figured it out far too late. It was a performance, a desperate, transparent attempt to rewind time, to pretend the last month hadn't happened. Thank you, Sarah, I said, my voice polite but distant. But I've already made plans. I walked past her, straight into my office. Minutes later, I left the house and went to a local pub for a burger and a beer. I could feel her eyes burning into my back as I walked out the door. She wasn't sorry. She was scared. She didn't miss me, her husband. She missed my wallet. She missed the security. She missed the easy life where she had a family unit fully funded by me, but one in which I was never truly allowed to belong. The smell of lasagna didn't smell like an apology. It smelled like desperation. And it changed nothing. Update 12 month has passed. The atmosphere in the house has shifted from tense to surreal. We are essentially two strangers coexisting under the same roof, communicating only through curt text messages or more often through our lawyers. Sarah's initial legal strategy: demand everything and see what sticks, slammed into the brick wall of our ironclad prenuptial agreement. Her lawyer is skilled, but even the best can't alter the words of a signed and notarized document. The house? Mine. My investments? Mine. Her attempt at child support? Dismissed at the first preliminary hearing. The judge practically laughed it out of court, leaving her lawyer fuming and Sarah in tears. When shock tactics failed, she moved on to a war of attrition and dirty tricks. First, I noticed charges on a joint credit card that had sat unused for years. Suddenly, there were bills for a luxury spa day, a designer handbag, expensive dinners with friends. She was deliberately running up marital debt, hoping I'd be forced to cover half of it. I froze the account instantly, reported the card stolen, and sent the statement to my lawyer. He filed a motion to ensure all debts incurred after our separation would be solely hers. Another loophole closed. Her next move was more personal. She tried to turn her kids against me. I overheard her crying on the phone with Jake, telling him I was heartless, that I was throwing them onto the street. She painted me as the villain, the cruel stepfather abandoning them in their time of need. But Jake is 16. He's not a child anymore. He understands more than she gives him credit for. The next day, he knocked on my office door, his first attempt to speak to me in weeks. Hey, Mark. Mom's really upset. I know, Jake. I'm sorry you and Emily are in the middle of this. He shifted awkwardly. She said you're making us leave. I kept my tone calm. Your mom and I are getting a divorce. This is my house, so yes, eventually she'll need to move, and you with her. But I'm not throwing anyone out on the street. She'll get a settlement that will help her get a new place. He nodded. Okay, it's just that night with dinner. We heard what she said. It was messed up. That one sentence meant more to me than anything my lawyer could have said. The kids saw. The kids knew. But Sarah wasn't finished. Last week, my lawyer called. Mark, you need to see this. Sarah has filed an emergency motion. She's accusing you of emotional abuse and requesting a restraining order to remove you from the house. My blood ran cold. This was a new level. Her motion was full of lies. She described my calm silence after the dinner incident as psychological warfare. She painted my budgeting as financial control and abuse. She was trying to have me thrown out of my own home. We went to court yesterday. Sarah took the stand, tears flowing, spinning an Oscar-worthy performance about how unsafe she felt. It was nauseating. When my lawyer's turn came, he didn't attack. He presented facts, the prenup, the bank statements, and then he brought up the dinner. Mrs. Miller, could you recount for the court the conversation you had with your husband on July 16th regarding dinner? She squirmed. It was nothing. A stupid argument over chicken. That's not my question. What exactly did you say to him? The judge, impatient, cut in. Answer the question, Mrs. Miller. Finally, barely above a whisper, she said, I told him I didn't cook for him, only for my kids, and that he should figure it out. My lawyer let it hang in the air. Then calmly, so, you told the man who pays your mortgage, utilities, car, and groceries that he was not included in the family meal. And now you claim his response choosing to figure it out on his own is abuse that makes you fear for your safety? The courtroom fell silent. The judge looked at her, then at her lawyer, and then he dismissed her motion on the spot, calling it a transparent, frivolous attempt to manipulate the system. He even warned her, file another like this, and sanctions would follow. We walked out of that courthouse, and for the first time in months, I could breathe. She had thrown her biggest punch, and it hadn't just missed, it had backfired spectacularly. The war wasn't over, but the tide had turned. Final update, it's been 6 months since that lonely slice of microwave pizza. Last week, the divorce became final. After her disastrous restraining order stunt, Sarah's fight fizzled. Her lawyer, likely eager to avoid sanctions, advised her to accept our original settlement offer. A fair split of marital assets and 1 year of rehabilitative alimony. It was generous, but a lifetime of comfort. It was not. The last few weeks of her living in the house were strange. The fire in her eyes was gone, replaced by a sullen silence. Then, one weekend, she packed up and left with the kids. She didn't even look at me when she closed the door behind her. The silence that followed was the most peaceful sound I've ever known. I've since heard bits and pieces. Reality has not been kind to her. She's renting a cramped two-bedroom apartment in a less desirable part of town. She's working full-time for the first time in over a decade, a receptionist at a dental office. She complains constantly about the apartment, the bills, the exhaustion. The easy life she once clung to is gone, but the most important part, the kids. A few weeks ago, Jake called me. He's looking at colleges, wanted advice. We talked for a while, and before hanging up, he said something that floored me. Mom says you ruined her life, but you didn't. She did. I get that now. That meant more to me than winning any court battle. As for me, life is good. I've reclaimed my house, my peace, my self-respect. The revenge wasn't some elaborate scheme. It was simply letting the consequences of her choices catch up with her. She had built her world on the belief that I existed only to provide, that I should be grateful for whatever scraps of affection she offered. The moment she told me, "You're a grown man, figure it out," she thought she was putting me in my place. Instead, she freed me. She told me to figure it out. So I did. I figured out I was better off alone. I figured out how to protect myself. I figured out how to move on. And now, she's the one who has to figure it out, how to pay rent, manage a budget, and build a life without the safety net she destroyed. Her cry, "You're ending this over dinner?" proved she never understood what she had until it was gone. She didn't just lose a husband. She lost a lifestyle she thought was her right, and that, I have to admit, is the most satisfying resolution of all.